Okay.
I, I would just like to make some introductory remarks. For those who don't know me, I'm Michael Carson, Executive Director of Create. And it is a great honor today to welcome Chef Pierre Thiam, who I've read about and heard about, and my old colleague, Pape Amadou Gaye, to our webinar, Exploring New Ideas to Transform Food Systems. And it's our first webinar. And before I start, I'd like to thank our team, Palomi and Natalie, for all their work organizing the event with Ambassador Joyce Leader, who will moderate the event. So thank you, Palomi, Natalie, and Joyce. And we're very excited. We're going to focus on three areas of integrated development: food security, health and nutrition, and Senegal, which will also touch on the Sahelian region of West Africa, which has a lot in common with each other. And briefly, for Create, our mission is to work with rural communities in Senegal to holistically develop self-sufficiency within the UN Development Goals framework. And we have our staff implements water, agriculture, food security, and income generation programs in 18 villages through women's groups. All of our projects focus on improving the nutrition and health of rural women and families. So this subject is very important to all of us, and we're very interested in hearing from Pierre and hearing from Pape and learning from their experiences. And before we start, I'd like to just mention a few statistics. And I think Bruce talked about maternal and child health, which is a very important part of our mission, because we do have high levels of food insecurity in Senegal. 19% of children under 5 are stunted, 6% acutely malnourished, and 13% underweight. And overall in Senegal, 17% of people are food insecure and lack access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food, which impacts their livelihoods and impacts their health. And right now, food insecurity is 7.2%, and malnutrition is 8%, but there are large disparities within regions. Dakar, which is obviously more wealthy, has lower food insecurity, and areas like Kédougou, which I know Pierre will talk about, where the Folio comes from, has much higher levels of food insecurity. A big part of our work is actually alleviating hunger during lean periods. And during the lean period in Senegal, nearly 800,000 people were food insecure this year, which is an increase compared to 2019. And a big reason for that increase was because of the impact of the pandemic and also weekly markets being closed throughout Senegal between March and June. And we actually opened up our farms and created point of sale markets, which helped to alleviate food insecurity. And also, which we want to hear from Pierre and Pape about, is about dietary diversity and how indigenous crops like fonio can help to alleviate and improve dietary diversity. And then lastly, 66% of children under 5 and 54% of women of reproductive age also suffer from malnutrition and anemia. And so this is something that we hope to target more and more in our work, and with the World Food Program and with other donors in Senegal and partners to work to alleviate food insecurity. Lastly, before we start the webinar, I just want to thank our sponsor, EnviroPack, which is in the Portland area in Clackamas, Oregon, for their generous support and helping to make the event possible, and to thank our intern, Kyle Martini, and the CEO of EnviroPack, Pete Martini, for supporting the event. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our board member, friend, retired ambassador to Guinea, Ambassador Joyce Leader, to kick off the event. Thank you, Joyce.
Well, thank you very much for that introduction and also for outlining the kinds of things we're hoping to get at today. What I'm going to do is talk first with the Pierre Thiam for about 15 minutes, and then with Pape Gaye for about 15 minutes. And then we'll open it to questions from the audience after giving the the two guests a chance to ask each other a question if they want. So without further ado, and we'll have enough time to, so be able to have a lot of questions. Let's get started. So I'd like to start with asking with Chef Pierre Thiam, a celebrated chef, restaurateur, award-winning cookbook author, and entrepreneur. We're very pleased and proud to have you with us today. So let's talk first a little bit about food security. And food is at the center of your endeavors, Chef Thiam. Your restaurant, Teranga in New York, specializes in healthy food sourced in Africa. Yolele Food imports, one of your enterprises, imports and distributes West African food in the United States market. Its anchor product is Folio, an ancient Senegalese grain. So how do you see these enterprises linking to the larger issue of food security and improved nutrition in Africa and maybe even in the US?
Well, thank you so much for this question that allows me to introduce a little bit what my enterprises are and their mission. Yolele is an African food company, that came to me really in an organic way, so to say. Food is my passion. I'm a chef, and my mission really, I felt, was to really bring a different take on West African food and African food really in the US. When I arrived in New York in the late 80s, I worked in so many different restaurants, Italians, French, Southeast Asian, but there was no such thing as West African food at the time. It's like, it looked like we didn't have any food culture. When you looked at New York City was calling itself the food capital of the world, but there was no representation of this food that I grew up eating in Senegal, that I grew up, this amazing food I knew had a place in New York City, in the food capital of the world. This really what started my whole, this journey of introducing this cuisine. Over time, I've opened restaurants in New York City, and I wrote cookbooks, 3 cookbooks, and each time, the mission started to shape up. I realized that there was to make this food, I needed to have access to the ingredients. There was no access to ingredients. I had to go sometimes to Chinatown to find substitute to bring the fermentation flavor to our cuisine, but it was not the real thing. And I saw it as an opportunity. I'm like, okay, there's a demand for it. I'm realizing that the food is being appreciated. Maybe this could be an opportunity to open markets for these ingredients. And that's really how it started. I wanted to create Yolele, this company that would open markets for smallholder farmers community in West Africa, and open, but because they have those products, those amazing products, but those are subsistence farmers. They don't have access to markets. Even you'd say crops like fonio, even in Dakar, it's getting there now, but at the time, getting fonio in Dakar was a challenge. You'd have to go to Kédougou to get fonio. That was, it's a terrible situation, and I thought I could bring a solution to it. Being a chef in New York, seeing how the market, the consumers are getting more conscious now. They are looking for products that are good for them, that are good for the planet, that are doing good as well as they spend their money. They like to see it doing good, and I saw this triple bottom line. And that's how it started. Fonio was this grain that was great for the environment, that's drought resistant, that's nutritious, that also can bring economic opportunity in regions like Kédougou, which are among the poorest regions in the world. And at the time, we were already talking about people leaving Kédougou in droves, trying to reach Europe, which is terrible. We're still talking about it today. It's in the news. We're still talking about young Senegalese drowning in the ocean because they don't have opportunities. And this was really what took me there, and it's a long way to get to your question about food security. This is really also connected directly to food security. If I could create a chain of value for products like Folio and take it from the raw paddy into like the packaged commercial product that I can commercialize overseas and also in Senegal, that could really be a great way to tackle food security. Instead of importing our food the way we're doing, unfortunately, we're still importing rice, or even though there's some progress now, we're still importing wheat. We don't grow wheat, we still eat baguettes every day. Why couldn't we be the one who would import the food itself, to export it, take it overseas? And that's just makes more sense, because Africa has arable land. They have 60% of the world's arable land. We should be the one growing our food, feeding ourselves instead of importing. So that's what Yolele is about, and that's what Teranga is doing as well. Teranga really is a continuation of Yolele. We present food that's that serves like ingredients from those smallholder farmers as well. We serve fonio, of course. We serve red rice from Liberia, from smallholder farmers in Liberia. We serve fermented cassava couscous from Cote d'Ivoire. Because of course it's not limited to Senegal. We want it to be about the region, the West African region, and that food culture is really transcending borders. Those borders are not really real anyway when it comes to Africa. So that's how this mission came to be for me. It was really about doing my passion, and I realized that in doing so, I could impact communities in Africa, and I could impact communities here in the US as well, by changing this mindset and having them starting seeing African food as something that has values, that has quality. As a matter of fact, that's very nutritious when it comes to our traditional West African food. That's what we need to return to. So that's really what I'm doing with Yolele and with Teranga, and that's the vision.
Well, that's just wonderful. I would note that about 70% of Senegal's food is imported. So it would be, at least that's one figure that I found. And I also found that of 65% of Senegal's land is arable, and only 30% of the irrigatable land is being used.
It's terrible. It's a terrible state of affair, and it's 70% imported. And you walk into any Senegalese supermarket or even in the local stores, you realize that close to 90% of the things that are sold in there, nothing is local. Everything is imported. So it's just terrible. We don't support our economy by not supporting our farmers, and that has a snowball effect on everything, and of course on nutrition.
Can you tell us, while we're on the subject, a little bit more about your long-term vision for Folio and its contribution to Senegal and its development?
Well, Folio, I see it as a model of development. What we're doing with Folio is something that will be a model for many other crops, because Folio is one crop. The vision for Yolele is to become the African pantry. We identify crops that are underutilized, like fonio and many others. We started introducing, like you mentioned, the pilaf when we were before the panel. Those pilafs, we use moringa in it. We use dawa dawa. I don't know if you know what dawa dawa is. We call it nete in Senegal. Pape would know. That's a fermented locust bean from a sustainable tree as well. We use baobab in one of the porridge that's about to come up. We're about to launch fonio chips using all those different flavors. But the idea behind it is to make sure we don't focus on only one grain. We want to focus on a traditional system of agriculture that we need to support, that supports the rotation of crops. Because the problem we have right now, and that's not only focusing to Senegal or Africa, it's a planet problem, is this monocultural system of agriculture has limited our diet, and our diet is we only eating 4 crops when it comes to the world. We're eating rice or wheat or corn or soy, and in Senegal it's worse. We only eat rice, unless you're lucky to live in Casamance or in Kédougou, where you have access to fonio or to millet, but we eat rice every single day. That's just terrible. So cherry. Somebody is mentioning cherry. Absolutely, cherry. We need to diversify our diet, and this is what the vision is for Yolele, is to bring these crops and to be the pantry that would offer this alternative of nutritious ingredients, for the world really. And Africa, it has to position itself like this. We are going to be feeding the world. As 60% of the world arable land, we're going to be feeding the world, and it's going to be in no time, because this planet is we're going to be 10 billion people on the planet. And how do we feed these people if we don't diversify the diet, if we don't think of agriculture in a way that's great for the planet, with crops that are drought resistant, with crops that are that grow in poor soil and restore the soil, like fonio, because that's the particularity of fonio. It restores the soil. It has deep roots that stores the carbon dioxide, that retains the water, and that adds nutrient to the soil. So it mitigates climate change. And this is the way we can do to contribute, by just choosing to diversify our diet and invest in consuming ingredients like fonio or millet or baobab or moringa, those ingredients that are underutilized. And if we don't utilize them, they tend to disappear. There are many ingredients that are already that have disappeared already because they are not utilized. And that's just what happens. We have no choice but finding ways to consume them. And that's what Yolele is doing by positioning itself and being the link between the farmers around the Sahel and the rest of the world, including the Sahel region as well. There is consumers who are looking for these products, and we want to be the ones who bring it to them with our brand.
Well, thank you for your reply and for putting the emphasis on diversifying the diet, because this is one of the concerns about our staff in Senegal, about how can we diversify the diets in rural areas where the food is so monotonous, was actually the French word that they used. That's right. It's the same day after day with very little variety. So, yeah. I mean, do you have some ideas about how you would get this out into the rural areas?
Well, there's different ways of doing it. I mean, for me as a chef, obviously, education, and making sure people have access to those ingredients as well. And I saw what Create is doing. What Create is doing is actually the solution, supporting those small gardens, those small community gardens, that's similar to the smallholder farmers, supporting them, but in supporting them is just also educating them, bringing crops that are good for this, not only for this environment, but good for the nutrition as well. Diversifying the diet means, adding greens, adding grains, adding beans, and adding protein in the diet. It's like having a balanced diet, and that's just the philosophy behind Teranga. As a matter of fact, Teranga is like a fast casual restaurant that's with a vision to scale. And what we do, we inspire by traditional West African cuisine, but we offer, beans like black eyed peas, in a form of a dish that in Senegal people would consider the poor people food, ndambe, but it's one of the hits in Teranga. It's like people just go for it because it's not only is delicious, but it's nutritious. We also offer next to it, it's a dish inspired by what we call sauce feuille or eforiro in Nigeria, but we use kale because we don't have access to sweet potato leaves or to cassava leaves. But having leaves in the diet is also good, and that just brings that balance. And we also offer, like fermented cassava leaves, cassava couscous, for instance, akeke in Cote d'Ivoire, and all those. I'm not inventing anything. I'm just finding inspiration from the traditional West African cuisine, which, by the way, is the best in the world, the most balanced in the world, according to the Lancet. Not me speaking. The Lancet report have said that. I'm like biased. I love it. This is what I grew up eating. But this is a great diet, but we stay away from it. And how did we get from that amazing diet to just using this monotonous day after day, same meal. It's just terrible. It's access, it's education. I think that's a little bit of both of it. And
Well,
that's why Create is great for that.
I'm wondering about how much you believe your cookbooks have added to is important to promoting all of these ideas. I was living in Burkina Faso one time when they got an excess of green beans that were supposed to be sent to Paris because the airplanes were flying over instead of stopping to collect the crop. And so everybody was ordered to go buy there and pick up free green beans. And in a couple of days, everybody was getting sick because they had no idea what to do with them.
Well, there we go, education, you know. I mean,
so so the cookbooks, how do you think that the cookbooks might do for, I mean, people that's part of the education, huh?
Totally. I think cooking classes is something that people should know how to cook for themselves. I mean, I think that's something that should be basic. You know, I think that should be taught in schools. I think at least in communities. You know, and most importantly, and I see you already do it with Create, working with women. And this is what we do at Yolele. We focus on working with women. We're working with women cooperatives. We help find and not only equip them and train them and guarantee markets for their products, you know, and because we know that these women will benefit the community. Not only they're the one who cook for the community. So if you teach women how to cook right, I mean, they know the basics, you know, but you give them the ingredients and you teach them how to use them, you know, how to use the green beans, for instance, you know, everyone will benefit from it. Their children first, and their husbands, of course, and the whole community will be a healthier community.
Well, thank you. Let's pause with you there for a moment, for a few minutes. You've given us a lot of food for thought, so to speak. And so I think we'd like to bring a few questions for Pape Gaye before we open it up to the larger group. Okay. Your work has centered on the health sector, with Intra-Health International you've focused on accessibility to health services through training of health personnel, and your new enterprise, your new venture, the Baobab Institute, sort of brings health and development together, if I was reading it properly. And so I was interested, it caught my eye in something I was reading, that malnutrition in Senegal had improved. This was written in 2018, it wasn't after COVID, and it had dropped to below 20%. But in the same report, they were talking about that there were very few interventions, developmental interventions, that specifically addressed nutrition issues within various sectors, and they named a number of sectors, including health. So I was wondering, when you were doing your work with health, did you come across this this difference that nutrition wasn't being particularly? How do you see these? The link between the health-related interventions, nutrition, and food security.
Well, thank you so much, and it's been a pleasure to participate in this and to listen to my brother, Pierre, whom in fact we brought here in Chapel Hill a couple of years ago as part of our conference called Switch Point, where we're looking for new ideas and ways to do things, looking into the future. So this is very much in line with that philosophy. Anyway, thank you for giving me a chance to talk about development and to talk about nutrition and food insecurity, which are so important. But I'm also sorry to say have kind of have not gotten the proper attention when it comes to funding or when it comes to the way we approach it. So I'm finishing up a very long career focus on supporting health workers around the world. And a lot of the projects I worked on, even though they were maternal and child health projects, I can tell you, I can count the number, with my fingers, the number of projects that were just focused on nutrition, mostly solely because it was thought that, it should be a different or separate programs and so forth. So I think, anyway, it is extremely important, but it's not getting the proper attention. It's not getting the proper funding. And unfortunately, in most cases, the nutrition is the afterthought. And that needs to change. I'm actually hopeful that we have an opportunity to look at development differently. And that's where I see the opportunity. I think the problem has been that nutrition has been programmed or funded in the context of humanitarian assistance rather than true development intervention. I think that's been the major problem. And clearly, it was a mistake because if the focus is development of the person as a whole, then you will see quickly that focusing on nutrition should have been a priority or should be a priority. You're not gonna eradicate extreme poverty, although we're doing tremendous job. In fact, in the last 50 years, we have cut the rate of extreme poverty seriously. But in order to do the job, we need to really shift the way we look at nutrition and we look at food insecurity. Because if people don't eat or they don't have a secure source of food, they're not going to be able to focus on the other elements of development to really be productive members of society and productive contributors to the economic development. But I'm hopeful, and I think the conversation is ripe for change right now because Africa is finally beginning to see the light. Because of the fact that Africa has been experiencing the fastest economic growth, it is the continent that is growing the fastest in the world, because people are beginning to see concretely. You travel around the continent, every single capital you travel, you can see the energy. So it's palpable. People are seeing development. I mean, if you go to Dakar, it is just incredible. Every trip I take, the changes, it's so fast and so forth. So I think moving forward, we can claim and we can propose ways to better focus on nutrition and food insecurity. It should be an integral part of our intervention as development. It should not be an afterthought. Having said that, I wanted to talk a little bit more about why we're into this problem to start with, because I think it's all linked to the way development is conducted. First of all, the fact that development as we know it today was something that was invented in the North or in the West or up here. It's something that we created, we developed, we put the parameters, we defined it, we put the standards, and then we push it down to the countries. I mean, obviously, and I think we are actually shifting. I think this is a time for pivot. I think the world is pivoting in a lot of ways. It's pivoting because of the conversations we're having about restoring dignity. It's pivoting because economic growth. It's pivoting because what's happening in the United States and all the questions about racism and dealing with systemic racism, that's going to have a ripple effect. We are talking more about decolonizing global health. These are all extremely important conversations. And then we have COVID, of course, and then we have to look at the post-COVID. So I see tremendous opportunities for actually doing the big pivot that we need to do in international development, in global development, if we have to move faster and if we have to accelerate progress. Because friends, that's the new agenda we need to set. We need to set the agenda as an acceleration agenda. What is it that we need to do so that we don't take 50 years to get to where we are today? What do we need to do to change things so that we can leapfrog, so that we can go much, much faster? And we have lots of opportunities for doing that. You know, I'm going on that one question. If you want to reformulate the question, or I can just go on and and because this is an area.
I'll just add a little sentence here. It wouldn't be the first time that Africa had leapfrogged in its development, and the invention of the coming of the cell phone was one of those situations.
Yes, absolutely. I'm telling you, that's actually the best. You know, when people are talking about use of technology today, you know, what the start of all of this was the use of cell phone. It was Ushahidi in Kenya. It was the it's M-Pesa, it's mobile money. All of those things were created in Africa. And, you know, a few years ago, I was at a conference and I heard somebody talk about reverse innovation. And I said, what the hell are you talking about? Because that was just this notion that innovation can only happen from here and then push down. I think a lot of innovations happen in places where people, and you know, and Africans have been resilient and creative. They have lacked the opportunity to put those to the service of their own development and so forth. So I was beginning to say that truly, you know, and the work you guys are doing and the focus you have in your model by having these community gardens run by women, that is going to be models like that. It is going to be going and working with people who are really going to be the movers and shakers. And we know that it's women in the most cases. So development needs to continue to center them on women. But I think we need to have a bold agenda because of all the new opportunities we have. Development is going to be radically different moving forward because, first of all, we have new actors and new players. You know, this is no longer the business of a handful of organizations, of an NGOs. It is so many actors that have come in the field of development. And they are the social entrepreneurs that have entered this space en masse, you know, in droves. They just, and they think they can do it better, faster, cheaper. And in a lot of cases they can. It's the private sector that is embracing this because of all the opportunities, the billions and billions of dollars that are available to fund the SDGs. It's academic institution that wants to play, but they want to play more smartly. They want to create opportunities for the future leaders of global health. You know, it's people. It's with self-care coming along. People know that they have to take things on their own hand, and then the learning from COVID is even gonna accentuate that. So you've got new players, you've got new energies, you've got people who want to do things differently. So I think it's great for the field. Then you've got technology. Then the advent of technology is obviously what's going to change everything, because now we can dream. We can dream of reaching that last mile, which is what you guys are doing in those programs. is reaching more communities in the last mile. So I think there's going to be good coming out of this difficult period we are going through in the world. And my call and my hope is that we'll be able to seize those opportunities. That's why with the Baobab Institute, I want to revisit ways to better tap into the human capacity, because that's what Africa has to offer the most. Africa has fantastic human resources that just needs to be tapped and to be helped so that it could be developed. Like if we could do that, if we could really shift the paradigm and start investing more in people, I think we're going to see better results and faster results. We need more Pierre Thiam, Chef Pierre, to really say Africa has so much to offer. Look at what we can do. Look at all the products that we have. I have seen a lot of progress. Pierre, I don't know if you agree, but I've seen a lot more promotion of national products. I've seen, you know, more bui powder. I see more local juices. I've seen there's been this revalorization of these things, and I just hope that we can continue to push for all of this. I feel like I've been talking for a long time. So maybe I'll pause.
You've been doing some
covering most of the things I wanted to ask about. So if I understand you, the kinds of things you're talking about here in terms of development would be built into the Baobab Institute's activities and its capacity building.
Yes, it is capacity building, but it is attempting to do it in a way that is truly, it is really producing solutions for African problems rather than this parachuting thinking and solutions that were designed and developed here. I mean, I think that's it's the problem. The reason why I think it's important to do it very deliberately is we have to undo a lot of things. I'm saying a lot these days that actually we need to start developing a huge agenda, a huge unlearning agenda. That's what I think. I think people like me, Africans who have come here, got this education, and really was trained to think a certain way. And my success as a developer is defined according to criteria that are very Western. So and we've created a lot of people in the field, in Senegal and in other countries, who are very smart, who know what the donors want, and who behave accordingly. Because if I'm told I have a $10 million project, but this is what I want you to do, I'm going to do that. It's not necessarily creating my solution. So we have to clear the air. We have to agree that some of the things that we learned were very good, but some of the things we need to let go. And then we need to create a new cadre of people who really think independently, think differently, and we need to level the playing field somehow. And to me, I'm hoping that Baobab will be that type of institution that will do that. It's taking me a long time to come and say, what exactly do I want to do? And thanks to COVID and the COVID situation and the inability to travel, I've been able to think and do a lot of listening. And I'm finding out that there are a lot of great things that are happening. There is so many youth that are doing fantastic things. And they need to be nurtured. We need to listen to them. We need to work with the youth. We need to do more. But I'm an optimist in general, and I'm really, really optimistic for the future of Africa. And I think And I think not only is it Africa's time, but I think Africa is taking off nicely, but we need that cushion, we need that deliberate way of coming and saying, you know, we can design what localization really is, because even the term localization, again, is one of those terms that, what does that mean, you know? Anyway, so that, yeah, that's the idea.
Well, thank you very much. Maybe we can pause here and see if either of you want to ask a question of the other before we go to the participants in this program.
Yeah.
But
I'm going to ask you the question first. I'm very interested in what you're doing, and I'm very interested in your experience about, you know, trying to promote a product like Folio. And, you know, you actually managed to get that in Whole Food. You know, what did it take to be successful in doing that? What were the convincing arguments to get, you know, a group like the Whole Food Group to do that? And if you could just talk a little bit about some of the challenges you're having by trying to introduce, you know, to introduce new foods, new things like that. Yeah.
Yeah, so for me, it really took just what you're talking about, being an optimistic. You know, I really had the passion, and I believed in what I was doing, and I believed in it because, you know, having worked in the restaurant industry for 3 decades, actually in New York City, I saw how the trends were coming, and I always knew that there was a time where African food was going to have its light, and that time when it arrives, you know, that was the perfect opportunity to introduce those products. You know, I've seen how different cuisines, you know, when we arrived in New York, there was only, you know, it was French and Italian really, and Indian, and then Chinese. And then gradually, you know, the Japanese came, and then the Thai came, and the Mexicans, and so on and so forth. And every time it was coming, it was really a food that was getting closer to the flavors that we knew in Africa. And in addition, the level of consciousness of the consumers were growing as well. People were looking for products that are nutritious. People were looking for wholesome products, healthy, you know, and gluten-free, and superfoods. And all of those were our food. You know, this is what we have in Africa. We have all those superfoods, you know, Baobab, the name of your institute. Baobab is a superfood at all levels, you know, and Folio, of course. So that was for me the conviction that this was going to happen. And, you know, and my last book, as you know, is dedicated to Folio, because I just knew that one thing I needed to do was to also educate people, let them know that this is the, you know, what this is about. And in doing so, you know, my restaurant being in Harlem, Whole Foods were opening in Harlem. You know, I was like, this is an opportunity. Let me connect with Whole Foods and let them know that, you know, we are the community here and we have products, and this is this product that I'm bringing. And they gave me a chance, opening my first, bringing my Folio in the first Whole Foods. But then I was there myself. I was doing food tasting. I would go to Whole Foods myself and do food demo and tasting. And every time I would do food demos and tasting, we would sell out of Folio. And we became a champion in our category at Whole Foods. For Whole Foods loved us. We are among the, you know, they're our best supporters. They write about us in their yearly report, their newsletter, they promote it. And they've been insisting from the get-go. They wanted me to be in all the New York stores first. We started with the New York stores, but the challenges that you asked in your question, but I wanted to make sure that the supplies were also there, you know. So working on the supply side was something that was very important to us. You know, we had to make sure the quality of the products. You have to make sure the women who are behind the processing of Folio would give us quality products and the quantity. So all of it was something that was very important, and we had to collaborate with NGOs that had a network of farmers, so that, you know, everything, all the requirements to be in a store like Whole Foods were fulfilled. And then we had to collaborate with, I went into a partnership with an organization called Woodland Foods, who are experts in importing foods from over 60 countries around the world, and they're distributing internationally, but all over the US as well. So they take care of the logistic for me.
Right.
You know, I go and identify the cooperatives and the farmers, and you know, around now our Folio is coming from Mali, Senegal, Togo, Ghana, you know, soon Burkina Faso. And I just need to identify the cooperatives, and Woodlands takes care of the logistics of bringing the Folio
Nice.
and then packaging it for under the Yolele brand. So that's really how it happened. And next thing you know, today we are distributed in all the Whole Foods around the country, across America, and it's still doing great. And we, you know, we also have the advantage of, you know, getting the media attention. We have amazing media attention, you know, through the restaurant and through, you know, and you name it. So this is really how it happened, you know, to answer your question.
Thanks.
Well, thank you very much. Maybe I should open it, given our time, up to the people in the audience. If
Yeah.
you have any questions.
Good idea.
So our first question is from Grace, and this is to Pape Gaye. She says, how has COVID-19 affected the planned Senegal emergent, and do we think the economic gains about extreme poverty will be resilient against the pandemic?
So as you know, in general, Africa has been handling this COVID much better than a lot of people have thought. But there has been there has been negative impact for sure. There's been a slowdown of activities, but also there has been some loss, because even though a country like Senegal has been doing so well with the health indicators, really in all fronts, there has been progress. In an area that I work a lot, which is family planning and reproductive health, has been in fact incredible progress. Family planning has not moved until 2012, when this program called the Ouagadougou Partnership started. Progress was very slow. Since then, in the last 4 years, Senegal has been making 4% gain every year in contraceptive prevalence rate. And unfortunately, because of COVID, it is slowing down. So we're seeing a lot of negative impact. Women are not getting access to those services. Unfortunately, we're seeing anecdotally, but it's been documented, some uptake in increase in domestic violence and things like that. So there's definitely going to be negative impact, and of course, a lot of negative, slow. We've lost ground economically speaking. I was just reading an article yesterday that the continent is going to suffer a loss of at least 2 or 3 points. So there has been those. What was the second part of the question again? Was it?
The second part of the question was, do we think the economic gains about extreme poverty will be resilient against the pandemic?
You know, I think we're gonna probably it's gonna be it's gonna pick up, because I think that it is a momentous occasion. I think Africa does have momentum for economic growth for a variety of reasons. The extraction industry is doing pretty well. That could be bad, that could be good, but I think it brings a lot of good opportunity. I think we are seeing very good trends in terms of people being educated and going back. There's a very nice trend of kids are coming, studying, and going back. So you're kind of seeing it in ministries. You're seeing kind of this new energy, and I think that's going to happen. So I don't know about you, Pierre, but my impression is that we're going to see a positive growth. There might be some slow down a little bit due to COVID, but I think we're going to recover, and I think it's going to continue.
I'm totally with you. I agree. I think we're fortunate that the response to COVID was great across the continent for the most part. You know, we did great, like you said, and people are realizing that COVID is a crisis that also is an opportunity. You know, like great crises come with great opportunities, and Africans are starting to realize that, you know, especially because people were like, there was so much, I mean, fear being thrown at us when COVID came. They were like, oh, it's gonna kill millions of Africans, and Africans were so resilient, and now they're realizing that, you know, they have only themselves to rely upon at this stage. You know, it's up to them to take this into turn this challenge and turn it into an opportunity, and that's what's happening. I think it's happening in not only in Africa. I mean, personally, we're doing it here in New York City at the restaurant. We took this opportunity in turning the restaurant from being this fast casual to being this community focused restaurant. We in Harlem, and the COVID came, and we started to focus in feeding shelters in Harlem, shelters that had kids who were in school but didn't have access to food because schools were closed. And now we're introducing this cuisine to them, and we're doing it with first responders. And we're about to launch a new restaurant just based on this new approach. And we think there's a way to develop this way, to scale this way, going into like inner cities where there's food security issues here in America, you know, and by doing that, you know, that could be an opportunity, you know, but we wouldn't see it if COVID hadn't hit this way, and, you know, and the whole industry got in trouble.
Yeah. By the way, did everybody see that Senegal was announced that there's this $1 test, COVID test that was developed, and that's probably going to be scaled up and by Institut Pasteur.
Yeah, I saw that.
I saw that. It was an article yesterday. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, can we have another question?
Yes, we have one from Bruce for Pape Gaye, or we have two from Bruce actually. The first one is, how can we capitalize on the fact that more attention is being given to the health sector as a result of COVID-19, perhaps than ever before in human history?
You know, I totally agree that it's a great opportunity. It should make our advocacy work a little bit easier, because it's been in with the world. We've all seen now the importance of health. We've all seen the importance of frontline health workers. We really, I think we now see an opportunity. I like to say that the next frontier for health is to take health into other sectors, into agriculture, into education, into environment, etc., etc. And it's easier said than done. But if we can do that, if we could truly have integrated development model, we'll go a long way. So yeah, so I think we now have an opportunity. I think that by the way, I think that's what's explaining all these new actors that are coming into the development field. A lot of it is being driven by global health, because you can say there's room for everybody to play in health. So I think it brings a great opportunity. I just hope we'll start acting accordingly, i.e. people will be open to new model of funding, that we're going to see more requests for proposal for integrated approaches and things like that. But if we're going to continue the same way of siloing our intervention, I'm afraid it's going to take us a little longer. Because I think that's part of the problem, is the way I set up, the way they are set up. So there's a lot of inefficiencies in the way we do development right now.
Thank you. Let's see if we have another question.
The second part of that question would be, how could we capitalize, particularly in Western Africa, on the attention and investment to include attention to other critical public health measures, and particularly in nutritional development?
I'll give you one thing we need to do is increase the amount of domestic funding. If we do that, everything else will fall very nicely. Because the health sector, unfortunately, has been, the priority they should give it. They have treated it like the World Bank or the donors. Somebody will always fund health. We don't have to worry about it. So I think that needs to change. If that changes, everything will change. If countries start putting more money, increasing their line item in their budget for health, look at the countries that are doing that. Look at the Rwandas and the Ethiopians and so forth. If you increase that commitment, not only will you be doing good things for your population, but I think it might also encourage your donors to do more in that field. But we need to see that. We need to see more ownership of the health sector by the national governments.
Thank you. And then any other questions, Natalie?
Yeah, we have another question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. The next question is, how can we explain the disparity between availability of rich crops and leaves and nutrition in Senegal? And okay, that's part 1 of 2.
I'll leave that to Pierre.
Oh, sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Yes. How can we explain the disparity between availability of rich crops and leaves and nutrition in Senegal?
How can we explain the discrepancy between the availability of crops, of rich crops, you said?
Yeah, rich crops and it looks like in leaves and nutrition in Senegal.
The discrepancy of the availability, I think oftentimes you can look into a plate and you see history for you, and oftentimes for us, it's been disrupted by colonization. A lot of our diet that we have in cities like Dakar are driven by what we think is best. What comes from the West is best, and we haven't developed our agriculture this way. We haven't focused in investing on our farmers. Let's just like what Pape is saying, focusing in investing in the health sector, but the same way it has to start with the food too. Food is medicine. If we develop a healthy agriculture, and our farmers, they know how to grow things. If we create a demand for those leaves, for those healthy products that our traditional cuisine used to have, that's disappearing. If we return to that tradition and we invest in it, that discrepancy you're talking about will no longer be there. But again, Pape mentioned something that was very important when he mentioned unlearning. We've been colonized, and we have this mentality. This mindset that we need to change and stop looking at products from the countryside as just country people food. We stop looking at black eyed peas are just something for poor people. That's just the thing. We need to really do that. We have what we need. We just need to consume them, and we need to support the farmers who grow them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I totally agree.
Do we have another question, Natalie?
Yes, this one's for Chef Pierre from Ruth. He's asking, given the focus on the community and potential of production of indigenous foods for export, which are labor intensive, given that the next 1 billion population are likely to be born in Africa, with the vast majority migrating to urban centers, who would envision the requisite workforce to support Ulele in production of Folio and nutritious indigenous foods?
Well, when you see that urban migration is due to the lack of opportunities in the farm, there will be farmers if there's work for them, if that work is also remunerating. Because what we do with Yolele, we're making sure when we buy the Folio, for instance, is one example, we buy it at a fair price, so that the farmers can have a dignified life with the products, with his crops, and the more there's a demand, the more the workforce will be there, particularly in Africa. You mentioned the population that's going to be 1 billion people in a few years, and most of them will be young people. Those young people who are taking their boats to try to make it to Spain, those are the ones who will be working in the food system. If they get an opportunity to make a living, a dignified living with that work, they will not go to the cities. They will not go to Spain. They will not drown in the ocean. I think that I'm confident that the workforce is there, and all they need is market for their products.
Thank you.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
First of all, Pierre and Pape, very nice to meet you, and the other people too, of course.
Thank you, Samba.
I've been very fascinated by your discussion about integrated development. I'm one of those people, I have my own way to say, yes, as human beings, we are made of flesh and blood, but we are also made of stories. Yes. You bring health, Pierre brings food, and I bring food for thought. Actually, Pierre, I think I came to one of your restaurants a few years ago with a Senegalese filmmaker, storyteller, Ousmane Sembène.
Oh, of course, yes. That's my father.
Exactly, with Mamadou Niang, the journalist.
Mamadou Niang, indeed. And Randy Weston, yeah, he used to come to the restaurant every time he was in New York City. Absolutely.
Well, congratulations for the good work. I just see a lot of areas of overlap in what we are doing. For years, I've been teaching here in the United States, meaning, of course, bringing African stories to the United States through novels, through inviting artists, through films. Surprisingly, over the years, I think I have received more success in bringing those stories to the United States than getting Africans themselves interested in those stories. I have since Sembène died, I have an annual event called Sembène Across Africa, which in each June 9th, we bring in Sembène's works to showcase his films in the most rural areas. Unfortunately, it seems like what we are doing, yes, it has some meaning. Even if you touch one individual, I think it's already a lot of progress, but no resonance at the level of our leaders. I have the impression people are still more interested. Pierre was talking about people still importing rice to Senegal.
Right.
And in Senegal, we are still more interested in Western movies, in Hollywood stories, than to African stories themselves. So in terms of integrated development, I think, this is just a comment, of course, nobody has the answer.
Yeah.
There is interest in combining the three areas, of course, food, health, and storytelling. What stories can we tell Americans to be interested in nutritious food from Africa? Because it also took years to bring African stories to the United States. So when it comes to teaching African literature, it did not start until the 1966 World Festival of Black Arts.
Yes.
Since then, we have made big strides. I don't have a question. It's just I discover, oh my God,
that's great.
There's a struggle at the level of bringing African commodities, food, in promoting African health and telling the African stories. It is the same struggle. I'm also glad to say I just joined Create because I saw the work that I'm from the rural areas. I'm from Kilira in Senegal. I'm in a smaller village, you disappear. So I think so many things change. I mean, we grew up eating fonio, eating nyebbe, eating chere. Now I go back to the village. I'm the one asking for cheddar boom. The people of the village are eating spaghetti.
Yeah, yeah, that's sad.
That is very true.
That is sad, and that's why it's important. Storytelling is very important, but it's also important for us at Yolele. The focus we bringing this food here to the U.S., but our main goal really is to make sure that food is accessible in Africa. You know, and and one way to make it accessible, Samba, you mentioned storytelling. Is branding. The branding is important, you know, and when we have our products on the shelves in the markets, in the stores, it has to be as attractive as the spaghetti products, you know. It has to be, people who have to want to buy it. It's already more nutritious. It's already brings pride because it's our product, but make it attractive, make it quality, and people would go for it. You know, this is one way we did it, is one way to like also say, look, even in the US, you know, people are just taking this grain now, and there's like they're realizing the, you know, this mindset. Of course, it's just a game, you know, but they're realizing that this is happening here. Why? That's our own products, you know. We should be eating it ourselves, you know. So we want to make sure we get the first served. You know, this is important that we feed ourselves with those products. This is for the rest of the world to share with the rest of the world, but it starts with our own selves, you know. So that's the idea behind Yolele, you know.
And Samba, I am so happy you brought up storytelling, because you know, especially if we are concerned about reaching the last mile in those communities, those are the voiceless people. Now, you know, and we are doing, with IntraHealth, we were doing a lot of work with promoting frontline health workers. And then, you know, we got one big company, I think it was Medtronics or somebody, sponsoring us to actually invest some money to training people, to train some of these workers, some of these frontline health workers in storytelling. So that, you know, when people hear the story, when they hear people talk from the heart, the experience that they're living, it makes a whole difference. And it's a rare commodity. We don't, in this development world where decisions are made in Geneva and New York and so forth, very far from the people that you, so it should be an integral part of what we do. It's, you know, because, and it's also, it's a medium that is very African. It's part of the culture, part of the way, you know, we all went through that. You know, we were brought up with storytelling. It's really, so thank you for bringing it.
The man like to dub himself as a modern griot, meaning, I mean, whether you use the camera or you use the pen, it all amounts to telling stories and connecting human beings. So I think, I mean, again, I was saying, I just joined the Create, very, very impressed with what they are trying to do. Ultimately, I think we'll measure only our success the day that Africans are able to do it themselves. I mean, bring them, of course, bring all the support. And in that, I think telling stories are very, very important. I was saying, I grew from the village. After we entered school, what was the measure of success? To get a degree, leave the land, go into an office and start writing, become a paper pusher. So those stories devalorized the land. Everybody wants to be an air-conditioned office. Now there is some sort of phenomenon that is very, very interesting. There are young people leaving the West, leaving the United States, leaving Europe, going back to Senegal, going back to Africa large, and to work in different. Why? Because the stories are changing. The paradigms are changing.
They are.
Yeah. So it was just by way of saying congratulations and thank you for the work you are doing, because.
Thank you, Samba. Thank you.
Thank you, Samba. Natalie, do we have any more questions?
Yes, I'm actually going to let Grace ask her 2 questions for Pierre. Grace, if you'd like to hop on.
Hi, Natalie. Thank you. I just want to say thank you so much for having this opportunity for us as well. Pierre, I have 2 questions for you. The first one is, I know that you have mentioned before that there is a lot of stigma around what's considered, quote, poor people food. And I've seen it before with my Senegalese host family, particularly with foods like chere and boom, or like the millet with leaf sauce. How do we market these really nutritious indigenous foods to people and get them to eat them? And then my second question is, do you think fonio is going to have the same effect as quinoa had in Latin America, where it became so desired by Westerners that it became priced out of reach for a lot of Latin American farmers, and they lost a staple food source? And that's something I've thought about with fonio too. So I'd be interested to see your thoughts, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Grace. Very, very good question, actually. And that's something that we are very conscious about, very mindful. We learned from the quinoa situation, and that was great for us to realize that one thing we want to avoid is a boom for fonio, you know, because that's what happened with quinoa. There was a boom, and a boom is always followed by a bust. And when the bust comes, and that's what we needed to avoid. So that's why it's important for us to work at the supply side. You know, working at the supply side is working with the women cooperatives, working with farmers. We started 3 years ago working already with research institutes in Senegal, in Mali, and also with Cornell University in collaboration to just improve the agriculture of fonio, just training farmers in better agricultural practices. The way they're doing it, you know, right now fonio is an easy grain to grow. They nickname it the lazy farmer's crop because you just have to throw the seed and you wait for the grain to grow. But you know, with the researchers, you know, at ISRA, they started training the farmers in growing fonio in rows. You know, simple things like this that really improve the production, increase the yield. We're also working with local investors to build a processing facility that will, sorry, there's an echo. Someone is talking in the back there that needs to be muted. So we're working on building a facility that will process fonio. Fonio is difficult to process. And right now, half of it is done manually. So we're building this mill that will process fonio in a way that's more efficient. You know, instead of 1 ton per day, we will have 3 tons per hour. And not only will have 3 tons per hour, but that will also reduce the waste, because the waste done right now, there's 40% of waste in fonio. So just having a milling that's more efficient eliminates the waste that's already doubling the production, but it also increases it. So the farmers will have this bottleneck of the processing removed by this mill, and that will increase their production. So all of these steps are taken to avoid this boom that's followed by a bust. You know, as long as the demand is coordinated with the supply, everything is fine. The farmers will never have to worry about crazy fluctuation of prices. The same thing that happened in Latin America with quinoa. And one more thing we're trying to do is working with governments at the regional level, you know, ECOWAS in Africa, to also protect the fonio. The name fonio needs to be protected for the region, this region where it's being grown. You know, that they've done that in other parts of the world. The Mediterranean had their crops protected. The wines are protected in certain part of France. We can do the same thing with fonio, so that what happened with quinoa, you know, now quinoa is being grown in Montana, quinoa is being grown in Ukraine, and they call it quinoa. You know, we have to protect. This is a heritage crop that belongs to West African farmers. So that's one of the things that we are doing to make sure we avoid what happened to quinoa. And also what happened to quinoa also has to do with education. Because the farmers in Chile and Peru, they did make money from quinoa. But unfortunately, once they made the money, their goal was to start eating the way Americans were eating. They wanted to eat with burgers. They wanted to eat, you know, things that were much less nutritious than the quinoa they were eating when they were less wealthy. Now that they had the money to buy cars, they did buy cars, they did invest in education, but they also brought fast foods in these regions, and that's what they started eating. So that's also something, another part of the story that's not taught. So educating people, like Create is talking about, is very important. In good nutrition is very important.
Thank you. Grace, does that answer your questions? Natalie.
This is gone.
I am here. Yes, it does. Thank you so much, Jenny and Jeff.
Thank you, Grace.
Jërëjëf, Grace.
Knockabok.
Knockabok.
Natalie?
All right, the next question is, how can the food system in Senegal be improved for the benefits of the population in the long term? And that would be for Pierre.
That's a Pierre question.
Yeah.
How can the food system in Senegal be improved for the benefit of the population in the long term? Again, I think that question, we somewhat answered it when we're talking about making sure we focus on the farmers, you know, the small family farmers. They are like a high percentage, I want to say 80% of the population, you know, that live in those rural areas, and they live from those farmers. So focusing on them, and particularly on the women, you know, organizing cooperatives are one way to do it, one way to improve the food system. You know, once we have sufficient amount of food being produced in Senegal by those small farmers, we won't need to import that substandard food that we're importing. That's really, you know, affecting our health. You know, that's what we need to do. We're focusing on supporting smallholder farmers, training them, equipping them, and it has to be done in a wholesome way too. You know, we are lucky that we didn't have much of our soil being depleted by, you know, chemicals like it's done in other parts of the world. This is a time for us now to stay wholesome and to use healthy ways of growing our food and feeding ourselves. But it has to be intentional. The politicians have to play their role and focus in investing in those smallholder, in the rural communities with small farmers. I think that's one way to do it, and support organizations like Create that have done that their mission.
Yeah.
I think there is also a story that illustrates that. I was in a conversation in Senegal, of course, we're sitting having a bowl of chebujen. And then, of course, as intellectuals, you know, we always are coming back with these big theories. What is neo-colonization? And everybody came from all our angles. And very simply, one cousin of mine said, oh, if you want to know what neo-colonization is, look at your bowl of food.
That's right.
Almost all the elements are imported. So I think another way of responding to that question, I mean, Pierre already eloquently responded. I think the day people grow what they eat and eat what they grow, I think then maybe we'll have rich progress and liberation in Africa. Now, that does not mean that we have to close ourselves to the rest of the world. We don't want to.
No.
We don't need to. But I think universalism starts at home.
That's right.
The same way, I mean, we critics say, if you want to be universal as a writer, every morning, describe the face of your neighbor every morning they wake up, you will have touched the universal. It has to start home, and then, of course, you can sprout out.
That's right.
So I think our progress will only be measured the day again when that food dependency, that intellectual dependency will have ceased. And then we start communication with the rest of the world.
Absolutely.
Natalie, do we have another question, or how many more do we have?
Looks like we have one more question, and I was going to direct that to Mary Kay so she can ask her question.
Sure.
Thank you.
Unmute. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much. This is wonderful and really, really fascinating. I was wondering, Chef Pierre, if you could make the connection between diversity of diet, indigenous food production, and climate change mitigation, because it seems like that's where we converge as organizations.
Yeah, I mean, the connection is direct. When you look at climate change and and you look at our food system, the food system, I'm talking about the global food system. The global food system is responsible for, when you talk about the water usage, we use 70% of the potable water to grow our food. That's already a crazy number, you know. And in Senegal, and we have crops that are drought resistant. You know, millet is drought resistant, sorghum is drought resistant, fonio is drought resistant. We need to focus on those, you know, and that already eliminates the one issue that we have, which is the water problem. This is a serious problem that we are facing. You know, another one, we talk about the greenhouse gas emission. It's also 1/3 of it is caused by the food system. Modern food system, big agri, is causing 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emission. So those are the biggest problems with climate change. Those are the biggest factors of climate change. So if we return to this traditional way of doing agriculture with smallholder farmers that grow the crops in rotation and that grow crops that are underutilized, like fonio, millet, sorghum, and so on. Those are the ways for us to restore the planet, because those crops, not only they're drought resistant, but they bring nutrition to the soil, you know, and we don't need any entrants, we don't need any chemical entrants. And not only that, but it's also great for our health, because we need to diversify our diet. You know, when we ignore those great crops that are great for us and great for the planet, not only it's hurting us, but it's hurting the planet. So this is what I think we should do.
And then, of course, there is the deforestation. With cooking the way we cook the food, which is another element, right? Because
absolutely. But you know, again, I was talking about mitigating climate change, but just the agriculture of these crops, you know, they by bringing nutrients to the soil, they restore the topsoil. So they even slow down the advance of desertification. And if we have an approach of growing our crops the way the way it's done with the trees and the grazing and the field, that's the wholesome way. And then you have, you know, at that moment, deforestation is taken care of, you know, the soil is taken care of, and the health of the consumer is taken care of. So it's like, yeah.
Great.
Natalie, I have a question for Pierre. Are fonio, the native rice, millet, are they feasible as small crops?
Is fonio feasible in small crops?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Say at the village level.
Absolutely. And this is, for the most part, that's what it is. And that's what we need to support. What our goal is to work with network of farmers, small crops, farmers who are growing fonio, but are growing also other crops in rotation, not only fonio, but other crops. And we need to support all the other crops. As a matter of fact, we're trying to bring a crop that has almost disappeared, that's called Bambara beans. You know, and you still see it in some parts of the southeast Senegal and some parts of Mali, but it's almost disappeared. But it's a crop that's really great. It brings nitrogens to the soil, and it's nutritious. You know, it tastes like peanuts, but it doesn't have the allergens of peanuts. You know, so that's a crop that has potential, enormous potential. So growing it again the way they used to do it traditionally, and we're working on it in Mali at the moment, and eventually, you know, if it takes on, we're going to start bringing it in other parts of the region.
What is the biggest obstacle to get the farmers to grow? Money or something else?
Yeah, the farmers' money, they need to have entrance. You know, you need to give them the seeds. That's pretty much all they need, seeds, and you guarantee to buy their production, and they will do it. You know, all they need is having access to seeds. They have the soil, they have the land, they have plenty of land. That they need soil, they need seeds, and they need market. You know, if you guarantee and you can even pre-finance the production, that's you did half the work is done.
Yeah.
And crops like Folio, you know, they will grow. You know, it doesn't matter how bad the rain season is. As long as there's one rain, the crops will grow. That's how easy.
There's one other question, quick.
Okay.
Are there co-ops, aggregates of farmers?
Sorry, come again?
Are there co-ops, that is groups of farmers?
Yeah, co-ops that are mostly run by women, and they what they do, they buy the fonio from the farmers, the parties, and they process it. They amazing. They do amazing work in and throughout the region. You know, in Burkina Faso, in Mali, in Senegal, in Kédougou. It's like amazing women who are like amazing businesswomen, visionaries, and hardworking. They just organize themselves in co-ops, and they're doing an amazing job.
So it is really feasible.
Absolutely, it is. It's feasible. It's being done.
Okay, thank you.
On this same subject, just to clarify for myself, you had said a little earlier that you were working with NGOs or to reach these sources of fonio.
To organize farmers, a network of farmers. We want to have a network of farmers that grows to 20,000 farmers. And to do it, to accelerate it, there are NGOs who already have worked, who have a network of farmers they're working with. So this is how we accelerate our approach to this target. And you know, that comes back to what Pape was saying, you know, just breaking the silos and work intelligently with all the other parts that, you know, to just complement you. They complete each other pretty much, you know. So this is what they do with us. So we're working with some NGOs on that level.
Well, we certainly have a lot of more things to explore. We're coming very close to the end of our time, I believe. Is there anything that anybody else would like to say before I ask our panelists to wrap up?
I don't see any more questions.
Would each of you like to say something in parting, some parting words of food for thought for us? Again, the food for thought. Let's start with Pierre.
Yeah.
Well, I think everything was said. Huh? I think we had a great panel. I was very impressed by, very honored to be sitting with Pape here. And Pape, I'm really looking forward to talking to you about Baobab Institute, because that's, you know, that's brilliant, and that's what we need, you know.
Absolutely.
But thank you again, and create. Thank you for creating this opportunity and for doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So there's a saying in Wolof, which is, it says actually nit nite garabam. It translates, it says that the medicine for a man is another man. So it's all about people, and it's people that are gonna solve problems and people that are gonna work together. So I just want to make a call again for this idea of we need to invest in our people. You know, both when we're coming from the humanitarian side or from the development side, that aspect is, I know when you're in this field, there is an urgency to do good, and there is also the risk to do harm while doing good. So I just think, I think the time is a momentous time for the world and for development and for Africa, and I hope we can take that lesson, and I want to thank everybody for the work you're doing. I think Create, by the way, your name is great. Create Action is really what we need to be doing. And thank you for giving me a chance to come and share thoughts.
Thank you both so very much. It's been a very great pleasure to listen to your thoughts and to your ideas and to your innovative way of thinking about all of these things. And it's just an inspiration to all of us. So
you.
with that, I'll hand it back to Michael.
Quickly, thank you, Joyce. And on behalf of our board of directors, on behalf of our staff, and on behalf of EnviroPac, thank you, Pape, thank you, Pierre. And we would like to invite both Pierre and Pape to create a partnership, and especially in terms of training farmers. We have over 1,000 farmers that we can add to your network, Pierre, to grow Folio and
Awesome.
grow other indigenous crops. Amadou Diouf, our agriculture technician, is actually on the call. And so on behalf of Amadou and on behalf of Omar Sek, our country director, we thank you, but we want to create a partnership. So we'll be reaching out to you very soon.
Excellent.
So we can
Excellent.
integrate Folio into the dietary diversity of the farmers we work with. And I also want to talk to you later about processing and points of distribution and how we can get Folio from the village to Kaolack to Dakar to Harlem to Berkeley, all over the US. And I think it's really inspiring. And Pape, I just want to add that in terms of training and in terms of integrating other health disciplines that you talked about, maternal health, child health, we want to talk to you about that and tap into your expertise, but really to create a partnership. We're creating it on the spot, informal partnership between Yolele, Teranga, Baobab Institute, and Create. But we're very excited. This is unbelievable, and thank everybody for attending, and we'll be in touch. And this is just the beginning of a strong partnership. So thank you, Peter. Thank you, Pape.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Yeah, let's keep in touch.
Definitely, Pape. Take care now.
Tamba.